The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Yaron Brook Show on this, it's Monday, beginning of the week. I hope everybody had a great weekend. Looking forward to a phenomenal week ahead. Where's everybody in the chat? The chat is like nothing. Usually there's something going on. Say something so I know you guys are alive, because otherwise I might worry I'm talking to a bunch of dead people. All right. I guess I should start with the Super Bowl, free of everything else. Thank you, Robert. I now know there are people there. Super Bowl yesterday. I don't know if you guys watched. I did. One football game a year that I actually watch. It was a good game. It wasn't a great game, but it was a good game. It's always fun when a game goes into overtime, although it was pretty late in Puerto Rico because we're now ahead of East Coast time. So it didn't mean staying up much later than my bedtime these days. But it was fun. I was rooting for San Francisco, but I didn't mind that Kansas City won, primarily because I figured it would make MAGA go nuts. So anything that makes the MAGA crowd go crazy, I'm all for. And I figure with Kelsey winning and Taylor Swift in the audience, I didn't see the end of the game, so I don't know if she actually went down onto the field and in front of all those people endorsed Joe Biden. But I'm sure in their imagination, she actually did. They can now rest assured that the conspiracy theory that the game was rigged for the sake of Kansas City because of Taylor Swift's endorsement of Biden is completely confirmed by the fact that Kansas City won the game. Therefore, they must have been right. It must have been rigged. So just that was enjoyable, that aspect to it, although I do still wish San Francisco would have won. I don't care that much. It is football, after all, a sport I don't really watch regularly, and I don't follow a team regularly enough to care that much about. All right, we'll get back to MAGA later, but I thought that was entertaining, and it was a fun game. Any game that goes into overtime is fun. All right, let's see. Quick Gaza update. So as you know, Israel controls now most of the Gaza Strip. It controls all of the north and a big chunk of the south, particularly the northern part of the south and the eastern part of the south. Israel is now threatening to move further south towards the city of Rafah. Rafah is right on the border with Egypt, and it is where the remnants of Hamas are, where they suspect the leadership of Hamas is, and where the hostages are probably. We'll talk about the hostages in a minute. And remember, there is a border there with Egypt. Remember, too, that Egypt, in spite of the fact that everybody accuses Israel of closing the borders and controlling the borders and all this stuff, Egypt has a very, very stringent border with Gaza. It has fences and barbed wire and walls and all this stuff. And they don't allow any Gazas into Egypt, and they have not allowed any movements. And so, that's Egypt. Anyway, Egypt is telling Israel, don't go to Rafah. If you do, you're going to put at risk the peace deal that we have with you. The Biden administration is telling Israel, don't go to Rafah unless you have a convincing, detailed plan that we, the Biden administration, approve of in order to protect the civilians in Rafah. Rafah is also the place where the civilians, primarily from Khan Yunis, the area that Israel is in the process of clearing up in southern Gaza, and all of northern Gaza have moved to. So there's, 1.5 million people crammed into this tiny, tiny, tiny little place. So it is it's not clear if Israel wants to, if it wants to kind of empty out Rafah of civilians, how it can do so. Where would they go? So Israel needs a plan, given that they're not going to have the fight with civilians all around them, not effective for Israel, and not effective for the way Israel fights, and not effective for kind of the world opinion and the international courts in The Hague and all of that stuff. Israel has to be careful in Rafah. So where do they evacuate people to? Interesting question. Anyway, lots of challenges facing Israel now as it is committed to moving into Rafah and to finishing off Hamas. I mean, basically, once they move into Rafah, they'll control all of the Gaza Strip, and then it's a match of just cleanup operations, getting into the last remaining tunnels, blowing them up, killing the remnants of Hamas, freeing the hostages, many of whom I think are already dead, so getting their bodies, and just cleanup operations which will have to take place. But there's still this issue of getting Rafah, and there's massive European, American, Egyptian, Arab pressure on Israel not to do it. And of course, the Israelis are saying, look, if we don't do it, we can't win. So basically what you're saying is we should give up on victory, give up on winning, so that we don't hurt Rafah. And so far, the Israelis are adamant about they will move in. We'll see in the next few days, maybe over a week, to see exactly what happens. Good news, overnight, Israel's special forces actually entered Rafah. They entered into a building, blew open the door, confronted a number of Hamas fighters who they killed, and managed to liberate 2 elderly hostages, 161 and 170, and bring them back out of Rafah, back into Israel, and they're with their families, I think, as we speak, unless they're in hospital getting either treatment or just getting evaluated. But they did, these are the first, well, they freed one Israeli female soldier early on in the war. These are the first 2 hostages they freed in a very long time. And I think it has raised hopes in Israel, hopefully not false hopes, but it has raised hopes that they'll be able to free other hostages from Rafah. But at least we have 2 alive in Israel, free, good for them. It sounds like the special forces did a phenomenal job. No casualties on the Israeli side. They were supported by, once shooting started, they were supported by helicopters and airplanes, and a lot of damage was done to the Palestinians, and quite a few Hamas fighters were killed in the operation, both inside the building where the hostages were kept, but also outside as they started shooting at the special operations team that was moving out of the area. But all of that got suppressed, destroyed by the Israeli Air Force. Again, as far as I know, as of my last reading, no casualties on the Israeli side. Great operation, good for them. Now they need to do a lot more of this, and what would be particularly effective is if they could find out where the Hamas leadership is, send the special forces in and kill the bastards, and move on from there. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if they have the intelligence. I don't know if they have the. I mean, my guess is these guys are surrounded by civilians and surrounded by hostages. A very tricky operation, and it might ultimately just require Israel to actually enter Rafah in mass with tanks and troops and everything else. I don't know if you've seen pictures of Gaza, of Gaza generally today. Israel's basically flattened the place. Everywhere it is touched, it has destroyed a vast number of the buildings, the infrastructure, everything. Housing, mosques, all kinds of university buildings, anything that was linked in one way or another to Hamas has been destroyed. The tunnels, of course, when they destroyed the tunnels, The building above the tunnels are destroyed. I mean, basically, people going home are going to find nothing other than rubble, or for most of them. It is real destruction. It's exactly what needs to happen. It's exactly what needed to happen in order to reset the Gazan mindset. I think Gazans are going to be shocked by what they find when they go home, which I think is good. And you're already seeing on social media Gazans writing about their frustration with Hamas. There was even a post that attributed to the Palestinian Authority, but probably from a rogue person in the Palestinian Authority, basically saying, look, people, we can't survive this way. We gotta recognize Israel's not going away. The Israelis are just not gonna roll over and play dead. We've got to recognize the existence of Israel. We've got to recognize the state of Israel. We've got to figure out a way to live and to thrive side by side with Israel. And that's exactly the attitude necessary. I will be showing, on one of the longer shows, I will be showing a video of an Israeli Arab, a woman who exhibits the kind of values, individualistic values, that will be necessary to achieve peace on both sides. So I think it's so inspiring that I want to share it with you, and it'll be a positive show about what human beings are possible, what possible for human beings. Of course, they have to make the choice to embrace that. Israel has to be, of course, careful with Egypt. The last thing Israel wants is a war with Egypt. I don't think Egypt wants a war with Israel. I think it's the last thing Egypt wants. But it is a risk Israel has to face, and it doesn't want the relationship with Egypt to deteriorate too far. But on the other hand, Israel has to do what's necessary. Israel has to do everything that it can to basically destroy Hamas forever. And to do that, it cannot leave any inch of the Gaza Strip unoccupied and uncontrolled by Israel. Now, if they can somehow kill the Hamas leadership, then maybe they can enter Rafah in a relatively peaceful way. But if not, they're not. It's unavoidable, and the Egyptians, I think, at the end of the day, are bluffing. At the end of the day, the Egyptians need that peace deal with Israel, and at the end of the day, the Egyptians would love to get rid of Hamas. Egypt has its own problems with the Muslim Brotherhood inside Egypt. Hamas is just a militant branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood inherently a militant. So Egypt, fundamentally, they can't say this because Muslim Brotherhood is very popular in Egypt, but fundamentally would be unbelievably happy to see Hamas destroyed. They are a thorn in Egypt's side. Egypt wants the Muslim Brotherhood to go away, and at least this particular military government in Egypt would like that to happen. And I think that'd be good for Egypt if it all went away. All right. Quick story from San Francisco, and I don't know all the details, and they don't really matter because it's, this is just so indicative and symbolic. It appears that one of these autonomous taxis, a Waymo, W-A-Y-M-O vehicle, that was in San Francisco, and looks like it might have gotten stuck in an intersection, and people were angry. People were upset by the car being stuck, although it's not clear if it really was stuck or if it stopped for a reason or what exactly was going on. The vehicle was surrounded by people, surrounded primarily by hooligans. There was video online of them smashing the vehicle with their, with anything they can get their hands on, trying to open the vehicle, but ultimately just smashing its windows with anything they can find, just standing around. These are all young people. Of course, they are wearing masks on their faces, or at least trying to cover up their faces with hats and anything else, because it's all being captured on video. And ultimately, they succeeded in breaking its windows and setting the car on fire. So the vehicle was in flames. I'm sure that opened up the intersection. The automobile was in flames. 10 people it's talk about the 10 people involved in this. No charges yet have been filed. Who knows? It's San Francisco. They might never be filed. But this is kind of the Luddite, nihilistic, but also stupid and destructive nature of so many young people today, unfortunately, and where I think San Francisco is in particular a symbol of. Watching this piece of, miraculous is the bad word, but because we don't believe in miracles, right? But amazing, fabulous, unbelievable technology that could really change life in dramatic ways, certainly save many, many, many thousands of human lives. Even in San Francisco, even with the partial experiment, even with all the limitations placed on these taxis, they are involved in a lot fewer accidents, a lot less fewer accidents that involve injury or fatalities. And the potential for these cars is stunning. And, what they will do for all of our lives, both in terms of saving lives, but also making it more efficient. Traffic jams are less likely. A self-driving car does not stop to look at an accident on the other side of the highway. So it's much more effective, much more efficient, and we become much more productive because we can do other things other than have to focus on driving while we're in the car. So this is an overwhelming, I think, good this is an overwhelming good that this represents, for all of us, for anybody who values time and life and human life. So Luddites, nihilists, San Francisco, sad. San Francisco used to represent tech, progress, growth. Now it represents destruction and Luddites, anti-tech, anti-growth. All right, a few international stories quickly, and then we'll talk about the presidential candidates. I'm going to take a 1 minute, 30 second. All right, let's see. Germany is in real trouble economically, which is really feeding, I think, the political problems that Germany faces and the rise of the right and the death of, we call them traditional political parties, but the rise of the political right, and all driven by the fact that Germany, days as an industrial superpower, basically seem to be coming to an end. Manufacturing output in Germany, which is Europe's largest economy, has been trending down since 2017. The decline is accelerating now as Germany's competitiveness just is eroding. They seem to have missed, German companies seem to have missed the investment in electric vehicles, or at least couldn't afford that investment given the huge subsidies that China and now the United States are pouring into that sector. The German companies lagged behind in terms of that and are struggling to catch up on electric vehicles, just as it appears the Chinese are going to flood the market. But it's more than just automobiles. It's segment after segment of German industry. While it has always been at the forefront, it has always been the best, it has always been superior engineering, that no longer is the case. Countries like Japan have been chipping away. South Korea has done a phenomenal job. A lot of the simpler engineering and simpler manufacturing businesses have moved to Eastern Europe, where it is cheaper to produce, less regulated, less controlled, and where the cost of labor is lower, and where you still have quite a bit of skilled labor. Germany is also, it has this business model, which is very much stakeholder stakeholder theory-driven business. There is no such thing as stakeholder capitalism, where the unions sit on the boards of directors. That, of course, raises the cost of labor. That, of course, makes decisions much more difficult, and it makes German companies a lot more effective, a lot less effective, a lot more cumbersome, and a lot less nimble than their competitors in the United States, their competitors maybe some places, particularly Eastern Europe, and the competitors in Southeast Asia. China is becoming a bigger and bigger rival, or at least has been. I'm not sure it continues to be, particularly for cheaper goods, but also just they're getting better. Their production quality is increasing. And of course, one of the things that is really killing the Germans right now, is the loss of cheap energy. And we can blame the war with Ukraine for that. You know, the fact that they've lost their supply of cheap natural gas from Russia. But maybe we should also blame, and I certainly am going to blame, the fact that, what is happening here? One second. The fact that Germany has shut down its nuclear power plants, which could have continued to supply cheap energy to the German economy, even without Russian natural gas. So this is very much, at the end of the day, self-inflicted. This is not primarily the consequence of the war. This is primarily the consequence of the self-inflicted environmental suicide of Germany to shut down nuclear power plants, a cheap and safest form of energy and electricity production available. So really insane. But generally, you know, if you look at Germany, things are not going well. As you'd expect in a mixed economy, things ultimately start deteriorating. Infrastructure is not, is doing very, very badly. It's aging. There hasn't been investment to renew that infrastructure. You've got an aging workforce. I mean, Germany is, again, another one of those European countries with a shrinking population. And while they've brought in a lot of immigrants, young immigrants, to do the work, it's going to take a lot of time before those immigrants can replace the kind of workers Germany has prided themselves on. Levels of education and competence is just not there. So while it might be a short-term fix, it's going to require a lot of time and investment to make this a long-term fix. And finally, Germany is unbelievably bureaucratic. It's bureaucratic and inefficient. I've told you, some of you will know this if you've listened to many of my shows, my hatred of the Frankfurt airport and the inefficiency, the rudeness, the bureaucracy there, the lack of any consideration for, I don't know, call it the passenger, the customer. And I think that is typical of kind of, unfortunately, of much of what is going on. And on top of that, there is a real decline in German educational system. Again, not surprising. Mixed economy and government intervention, and the German educational system, which has always been the source of ultimately some of the productivity gains, that German educational system is not living up to what we thought. Or not living up to what it was. All right. Let's see. Also, by the way, just on top of all the other problems, What you also got is a significant downturn in office buildings in Germany, which is a kind of a global phenomenon, certainly a Western European American phenomenon. But that is also hurting just generally the economy in Germany. The 13%, you saw a 13% drop in, what? I think in value, in market value, over the last quarter on an annualized basis. Yeah, prices slumped more than 10%, and there's just been less activity, dramatically less activity. So Germany, like China, like the United States, has an office building problem. I guess not overly surprising. So German economy is struggling, which has lots of implications for the rest of Europe and really for kind of the global economy and NATO and the EU. I mean, Germany is kind of within Europe, the bastion of NATO. Within Europe, it is the largest, most productive, most effective economy, and yet it's not anymore. The Germans cannot afford to bail out the Greeks anymore, never mind the Italians or the Spaniards. What happens when you get another economic crisis in Europe, a real deep economic crisis, particularly in the debt-ridden, ineffective, relatively significantly poorer economies of Southern Europe? How do the Germans respond to that? So I think the rise of the new right is not surprising in Germany, given all of this, and the future is very, very troubling. Given this real economic challenges that are facing kind of really the linchpin of the whole EU project, which is the German economy. All right, we'll do this quickly. Pakistan had elections. I'm not an expert on Pakistan. I generally am worried about Pakistan. Pakistan is a country that is ruled basically by different clans. It is basically ruled by the clan that dominates the military primarily. It is technically a democracy, but not a very functional one. It has two particular clans that dominate its politics: the Sharifs and the Bhuttos, but it has a alternative political party that has risen to popularity over the last few years, and that is the political party of the former cricket star Imran Khan, who became a prime minister, was deposed, accused of all kinds of things, ultimately is in jail right now. And what is truly amazing is his political party was dismantled. It was ruled illegal, but his candidates, Imran Khan's political party's candidates, all ran as independents, and they won. His political party actually got, as independents, not as a party, more seats than any other political party in Pakistan. The military is not happy about this. Part of what he was doing, I think, as prime minister, is trying to dismantle the relationship between the political world and the military, maybe take away some of the goodies and some of the benefits the military got from the political establishment. Anyway, it's chaos. And what makes Pakistan, there are lots of countries with chaos, what makes Pakistan important, and important to understand, or at least somewhat, and important to follow, at least somewhat, is the fact that Pakistan is a nuclear power, and the fact that Pakistan has a significant number of Islamists. At any given point in time, one could imagine Pakistan being taken over by an Islamist government. The military in Pakistan has been, in various periods, very friendly towards Islamist parties. They have traditionally and historically been supporters of the Taliban, maybe not so much right now. Anyway, Pakistan is a mess that I do not understand. I don't know. I don't have the knowledge of the details of Pakistani politics. I don't know if Imran Khan is better than the others. I don't know if there are any good guys in Pakistani politics. I would be surprised, shocked if there were. But the reality is, this is a country in turmoil. turmoil is not helpful when the military possesses nuclear weapons, and when the military could be very well dominated by Islamists who could really create havoc. I mean, we are focused on Iran, we're focused on China invading Taiwan, you're focused on Ukraine, but a war between India and Pakistan could be really, really, really bad. Both parties have nuclear weapons. And, China's not that far, and you could imagine India, Pakistan, China, a conflict there. India and China don't get along that well. Not good for anybody around the world, far from us in the United States. But once you get nukes involved, everybody becomes affected. So something to watch. It looks like the traditional parties of the two clans that I talked about, the Sharifs and the Bhuttus, might be getting together to try to form a coalition to keep the Imran Khan faction out. Khan is still in jail. I don't think this will free him. They fear him. That may be a sign that he's better, but I don't know if he is better, how much better. But this is a region of the world worth watching and being worried about. We'll get to worried about region of the world in a bit. Wow, we're going long. Okay, Philippines. Philippines, just the story here is really nothing current, nothing urgent, but the story with the Philippines is they are arming themselves like crazy. They are trying to build a modern military force. They're trying to build a modern navy. They are now right now out to buy submarines. They already have bought supersonic ballistic missiles from India. They bought world-class fighter jets from the South Koreans. They are, particularly Air Force and Navy. The Philippines are building up an army. The Philippines is the fastest growing economy in Asia right now. So they passed Vietnam as the fastest growing economy in Asia. So that means the economy is generating money and wealth. Some of that money and wealth are being sucked up by the government to buy and invest in military hardware. The reason for this is not hard to figure out, and it is China. China's aggression on the South China Sea and in many areas that Philippines consider their territorial waters or international territorial waters where nobody should control. They fear the Chinese. They can't compete directly with the Chinese, but if they build up a military that would cause China real damage, maybe China would think twice about being too aggressive towards them. You could also view the Philippines in kind of a slightly longer term, but in a wider scenario as one of the U.S. allies, together with South Korea and Japan, in that region, who could challenge China. For example, if China tried to invade or try to blockade Taiwan, the Philippines have a clear incentive to not allow for Chinese aggression. Chinese aggression against Taiwan could easily be followed by Chinese aggression against the Philippines. There are islands, there are areas in the ocean that the Chinese want to dominate, and the Philippines do not want them there. So definitely another area of the world to watch carefully. All right. So I want to say a few things about the election, but let me just a few stories about our wonderful candidates for president of the United States before I kind of give you a summary of what I think. Just some stuff that's kind of fun, but silly, but it tells you the mentality of the people we have running for the president of the United States. Donald Trump, on Sunday before the Super Bowl, in response to kind of the MAGA right-wing meltdown around Kelsey and Taylor Swift, said that he would consider Taylor Swift's endorsement of Biden as her being, it would be disloyal to him. Donald Trump, son of God, I guess. He wrote, I signed and was responsible for the Music Modernization Act for Taylor Swift and all other medical artists. right? Joe Biden didn't do anything for Taylor and never will. There's no way she could endorse crooked Joe Biden, the worst and most corrupt president in the history of our country, and be disloyal to the man who made her so much money. Besides that, I like her boyfriend, Travis, even though he may be a liberal and probably can't stand me. All right, put aside just the stupidity of it and the ridiculousness of it, the megalomania of it. I mean, he signed the bill that probably any other president would sign. It was, if I remember right, a bipartisan bill. It wasn't particularly Republican. And yes, Taylor Swift has, but this is the kind of BS Donald Trump engages in on his social media platform. This is the kind of stuff that concerns him and bothers him. This is a guy who was president and could be president of the United States again. But that was just a mild thing. In one of his campaign stops over the weekend, and you've probably seen headlines about this, and it's all over the place, Donald Trump said that that basically he told a NATO member in Europe, that if they didn't pay up their membership dues, although there is no such thing as membership dues to NATO, that not only would the United States not come to their support, thus violating a significant treaty the United States has with NATO, a treaty confirmed by Congress, and that the United States is obliged to live up to. I might remind you that after 9/11, the Europeans did play their part in once the NATO treaty was activated in support of the United States post 9/11. But he said to this NATO member that not only would the United States not come and help this country if it was invaded by Russia, he would encourage Putin to invade them and do whatever the hell he wants with them. Not making this up. Watch the video. He said it. This is Donald Trump. This is who you want to elect president. This is what he said. Of course, I'm not covering it in great depth because the whole world is, everybody's going apoplectic, as they should. This is, absurd, ridiculous, and following the Putin interview, just more proof of how fawning Donald Trump is over Putin and would let him do anything. And, the idea that Donald Trump would hold Putin back and Donald Trump would be the one to prevent Putin from acting is absurd and ridiculous and nutty. All right, just because, we don't want to be just one-sided here. Joe Biden, who had all his memory and really his cognitive functioning challenged by an independent prosecutor last week, and who, in defending his own memory, misidentified the president of Egypt with the president of Mexico. I'm sure a problem anybody would have. Decided, probably because of these memory lapses, not to do a traditional interview with the media before the Super Bowl. Traditionally, there's been CBS runs an interview with the president before the Super Bowl. American people all at home, ready for the Super Bowl, engaged. This is a time to communicate with them and talk to them. And Joe Biden declined to participate in such an interview. And it was speculated that it was his memory. Instead, he went on, I don't know if it was television, I don't know where it was, but he went on some platform, certainly I saw it on Twitter, and made a little statement about watching the football and watching the Super Bowl. And you're probably getting all those packaged goods, chips and stuff, ready to eat during the Super Bowl. And he says, you might notice there are fewer chips in the bag. You might notice that there are fewer cookies in the box, basically mimicking the tweet I gave you from Elizabeth Warren from, Thursday or Friday last week. So, and he called it again shrinkflation, warning the Americans against shrinkflation and corporate greed and American business. This is what Joe Biden decided to do with his time just before the Super Bowl, in talking to the American people and having their attention. Talk about shrinkflation. All right, look, we've got a moron running for president and actually leading in the polls. And we've got a senile incompetent who's in the White House and who might even beat the moron when it actually comes to the election. We've got two completely incompetent and unworthy people running for the presidency of the United States. I mean, I don't understand anybody. I really don't understand anybody who thinks that either one of these people should be president. Put aside the greater of two evils. These two guys are evil. Now, imagine for a minute that sometime in 2025, China places a blockade over Taiwan, and Taiwan requests U.S. aid in breaking that blockade. Or imagine Pakistan and India on the verge of war, and China threatening engagement. Or imagine, by the way, none of these are crazy. All of these are possible. Probably not likely, but certainly possible. Imagine Russia having cut a deal and now having this large army free from Ukraine, amassing troops on the Belarus-Poland border. Imagine, again, well within the probabilities, imagine Iran on the verge of basically, literally on the verge of nuclearizing its ballistic missiles. God, here's Scott, right? You know, sometimes Scott is a great foil. Scott says blaming private companies for inflation is disqualifying, but telling Putin to invade a NATO country and do whatever he wants with it isn't, Scott? God, you are insane. I mean, worse than insane. I mean, and this is exactly the mentality that we must fight against. Imagine any one of those four scenarios. Imagine any one of those actually happening. He wasn't telling them to pay. He was actually telling them that he would, if they didn't pay, he would tell Putin to invade them. Diplomacy. He's a brilliant diplomat. Russia was asked for comment. They decided to refrain from commenting on it. At least he hates the left. Hand Putin all of Europe, but at least he hates the left. So imagine any one of those scenarios. And imagine a President Biden or President Trump. What do they do? How do they respond? Now, you know, they've got teams around them. But is Biden even cognitive enough, have enough cognition to know who to listen to make a judgment call? Does he have the wherewithal to be guiding America in crises that could lead to nuclear confrontation, literally lead to World War III, which again I think is unlikely, but with these guys, maybe it's not unlikely. Is Kamala Harris the person you want, and I don't know much about Kamala Harris, but she the person you want stepping in to take command and to be commander-in-chief of the American military in a time of crisis like that. Do we trust anything she would do? Is there any reason to trust her? Can she lead the American people? Can she unite the American people around whatever goal we want to do? Let Taiwan go or defend it? And Trump. Now, in his first go-round, he had Mathis. He had Bolton for a while. He had Kelly. He surrounded himself with unbelievably competent generals. All of them, by the way, have since denounced him. All of them have denounced him. There was no question in the second term, those are not going to people, not the kind of people he's going to surround himself. Why? Because those are the people that denounced him. That kind of person. He will surround himself with MAGA nutcases. What will he do? Will anybody be willing to tell truth to power? Will anybody in that administration be willing to challenge his emotional outbursts? Do we really want a moron with the mentality of a 3-year-old with American nuclear codes? I would rather have Kamala Harris. Who knows what he would do? But none of what he would do would be good. And it's the most likely thing to do if you follow MAGA is to unilaterally surrender. Is to go over to Beijing, kiss Xi's feet, and say, well, yeah, I mean, Taiwan was part of, it was. I know it was. I've studied geography. I have a high IQ. And Taiwan was part of China, so why shouldn't Xi want it? Yeah, yep, I think she should have it. I'll cut a deal. I'll make a deal. Oh, what does he do with Iran? I'll cut a deal. I'll make a deal. I know how to stop them. Oh, what does he do with Putin? Oh, I don't know that the Poles have paid their fees. I don't know if they've paid enough. Maybe he should just take Poland. What the hell? He doesn't like Poland anyway. And you know, some of those Polish lands in Western Poland, in Eastern Poland, some of those lands in Eastern Poland, you know, really, if you go back to 1654, really, those lands kind of belong to Russia. They were Russia back then. So why not? Let's have a deal. Poland, give them the. Now Poland wouldn't listen to him, luckily, and Poland could actually probably take on the Russian military and defeat them these days. But to either one of these people, it's even hard to call them people. They're so beneath contempt. To either one of these people, do you trust to make decisions at cliff's edge when really, I'm not exaggerating, the fate of humanity rests? Do you trust them to stand up to the real evil powers out there in the world and achieve anything that is going to benefit the United States? I mean, both are unbelievably destructive to America. Destructive to American interests, destructive to our lives. And if there's any way to prevent them from being the candidates of their political party, people should take it. I have no understanding of how the Democratic Party has not already kicked Joe Biden off the ticket. I mean, where are those old days of smoke-filled rooms and political movers and shakers making those decisions? And the fact that the Republican Party will not coalesce around an alternative to this idiot, to this petty, childish, insecurity in negotiating with a Putin. Putin will run rings around this guy. Negotiating with Xi, he has no chance against Xi. They are so much more sophisticated than he is. He is like a child playing in an adult game, but where the where their stakes are life and death, and where the adults who used to protect us from him are no longer in the administration, no longer there. Right. So, Republican Party better rally around an alternative, whoever that may be, if it's Nikki Haley or anybody else. He also managed to insult Nikki Haley's husband and insult the fact that he was serving in the military overseas, which I think played into her hand, but I don't think it's enough. The reality is the American people are the Republican Party is quite satisfied, quite happy with Donald Trump. And that tells you everything you need to know about the modern Republican Party. By the way, if you're noticing people retiring from Congress, all the better Republicans are now retiring from Congress, so that the new Republican Party is going to be MAGA through and through. I don't know. It's so easy to be super pessimistic these days because I really don't know how we survive the what is going on out there, what's going on in the world. All right, let me remind you that again that the Ayn Rand Institute is holding a conference in Austin, Texas, in March, towards the end of March, primarily for students interested in deepening their understanding in objectivism. Those of you who enjoyed Jason Ryan's the other day, Jason will be one of the teachers there. Greg Salamieri, Tara Smith, Ben Baer. I mean, it's quite a lineup of philosophers. You got 4 superstar philosophers right there. I think it's going to be a terrific conference. You'll get to know the speakers, the professors. It's going to be a small, intimate. It's not going to be 300 people. It's probably going to be closer to, it'll be under 100 purposefully. Keep it small so that you have a lot of time with these people, right? I encourage you to apply. You can apply for scholarships still at the Ayn Rand Institute website. The best way to do that is aynrand.org/start here. Anybody out there interested in deepening their understanding of objectivism, this is the best conference you can attend. This is, this is what you need to. This is you really should do this. You really, really, really should do this. All right. Finally, we're $14 away from the goal. Somebody step in and make it happen. All right. And I appreciate all the super chats we already got. And of course, the fact this show is only made possible from the support from people like you. And I appreciate that. All right, Harper Campbell, what a bizarre contradiction that these blue cities whose universities scorn production and innovation are the only regions in the country producing, creating, and moving humanity forward. What do red states produce? Agriculture and church attendance. Well, you're exaggerating, of course. Texas also has Tesla and has a vibrant tech community. Of course, much of that tech community is in Austin, which is a blue city. Texas also produces the energy, the fracking, the oil. That's pretty red. And so does Oklahoma and other states. So it is more than that. There is a lot of industry in the Midwest, in a lot of the red states of the Midwest. But it is true that conservatism in and of itself, particularly as manifest in its religious version, is not conducive to innovation. It's not conducive to breakthrough thinking. It's not conducive to challenging the world. Elon Musk might be some kind of, who knows what he is, conservative or right-wing or whatever, but he's not conservative in his thinking. And I doubt he's religious. But there's a reason why Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley. And there's a reason why they are not Republicans, when the Republican Party embraces religion, embraces moronism. Is it moronism? I think that's a technical term. The reality is that innovation requires a liberal, i.e., liberty-oriented mindset. And yes, I wish they would view liberty as encompassing a wide array of human activities rather than just a narrow one. But the reality is that without Silicon Valley, without the innovation of Silicon Valley, this country would be a disaster. And the last 40 years, we would be where Germany is, struggling. We would be, and it doesn't matter who presidents were, without Silicon Valley driving this economy forward, without the innovation, without the progress, we would be so much poorer, so dramatically poorer. And you know, it takes a certain mentality, and that mentality to innovate and progress and to push things forward. And that mentality is not consistent with religion, and it's not religion, the kind of religion, particularly in America, and it's not consistent with kind of the I don't know, stultifying. Well, with a conservative, i.e., to conserve, right? What is Silicon Valley about? It's the opposite of conserving. It's to change, right? It's to change. Right? It's breaking away from tradition. It's, you know, changing the world, and that's a different mindset, and it's a mindset that the right has not produced anywhere near the same numbers as the left has. Silvanos, another $50. Thank you, Hopper Campbell, for the $50. Considering how tense things are currently around the world, a World War III sounds more and more possible. Assuming it could, how long do you think we have? Well, you know, I don't think you can have a World War III, primarily because, with the exception of Iran, the bad guys are all interested in staying alive. Xi does not want to die. Even Putin does not want to die. Putin does not want a third world war. Putin does not want to engage in nuclear tit for tat with the United States or Europe. And the reality is both Putin and Xi are still weak. Putin is struggling to take on Ukraine, which was a pretty primitive military when it started. Is still not a particularly sophisticated one. For example, it doesn't have advanced jets, and it is lagging in many other capabilities. But for Russia to take on Poland, which is now building, you know, a world-class military and a large military, or to take on Finland, or to take on NATO even without the United States, would be suicidal for Russia, and probably would not happen. And I think at the end of the day, the same is true of Xi. Does Xi really want to engage in war with Taiwan that would cut off trade globally and thus drive most of Chinese business into bankruptcy? It would bring to the forefront the South Koreans, the Japanese, and potentially the Americans, and create an alliance of countries in Eastern Asia that is opposed to China. Is he that suicidal, and could again ultimately result in kind of a nuclear war, which he might not lose, but he would lose his life, likely. And many Chinese would lose their lives. So I just don't think it's going to happen. I think the scariest regime is that of Iran, because they are suicidal. And that's why it's so important to prevent them from gaining nuclear, any kind of nuclear weapons. All right. So anyway, I'm not worried about World War III under normal circumstances, I guess, well, how would I say it? What I'm worried about is the idiots running the American government. And here, I worry more about Trump than Biden. The idiots running the American government tripping into World War III without meaning it. Because they don't know what they're doing. Because they really don't know what they're doing. And I think that Trump on foreign policy is likely to surround himself with people even more incompetent than Biden has surrounded himself. I think Biden's people are incompetent. Trump's people will be even more incompetent, and they'll also be fighting among each other and fighting with the bureaucracy constantly. And it's not like the bureaucracy is going to disappear and Trump will fire them all. That's great rhetoric in a campaign speech. He didn't do it the first time, and he's very unlikely to be able to do it the second time, particularly not if the world is going crazy. All right, James, do evil people ever change their ways? I personally have never seen it. All the evil narcissists in my family who passed away were rotten and nasty until their dying day. It's rare, and if they're going to change their ways, it's usually earlier in life. It usually is earlier in life. But, for a story of somebody who changes his way, although he's never really evil, but for somebody who changes his way, read Les Miserables, Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. And I do think people change their ways because of particular occurrences. It's harder the older they get. And if they're evil narcissists in their middle ages, it's very hard for them to change later, and it almost never happens. But young people can. Generally, the later in life you wait to change their ways, the more difficult they become. It becomes to do it. Liam says, was it really Reagan who brought Christianity into the Republican Party? Wasn't it Eisenhower? He's the one who put it in God We Trust on the dollar bill and introduced prayer in school. Yeah, but the difference was he kind of appeased Christianity at the margins. Ultimately, even Ayn Rand criticized Goldwater for bringing in Christianity too much during the campaign. But what Ronald Reagan did was something very different. He brought, you could argue, the worst elements within Christianity, the moral majority, the evangelicals, who were looking for a home because originally they didn't vote. Then they voted for Jimmy Carter, and then they felt betrayed by Carter, so they were looking for a home. And Reagan brought them and placed them smack in the middle of the Republican Party. Not as an influence on the outside, not as throw them a few bones here and there so that, they keep them quiet, but smack into the middle of the Republican Party, into the power base of the Republican Party. So today, if you are not a Bible-thumping, crazy religionist, it's very difficult unless you are a hedonistic moron. Those are the two options. It's very difficult to win in Republican politics. I mean, look now who the Speaker of the House is, and how the better, the saner, the more secular people within the Republican Party have all been marginalized, have all been kicked out. So this is the price we pay. And it's gotten worse systematically over the last 40 years. So yes, I think it's ultimately Ronald Reagan because he brought them as a group, as an entity, and an establishment. All right, let's see. All right, Michael says, what's the difference between benevolence and kindness? I feel like benevolence is not an act, it's a lifestyle. Well, it's an attitude. It's a perspective on the world, right? Benevolence is a perspective. It's a perspective of the world's a positive place, positive things, the good is rewarded in a sense. There's justice in the world. And there's nothing metaphysical that is anti-me. There's nothing metaphysical that is anti-human or anti-life. And, if you do the right things, good things will generally happen to you. So it's very much an attitude about the world more than kindness as an action. Kindness might be part of benevolence in certain respects. Sometimes kindness is not benevolence; it's just stupidity. But it is different. Benevolence is a much broader concept. Michael, what's the point of high denomination currency like the $100 bill or the $1,000 bill they have in Switzerland? Doesn't it just make it easier for criminals to do illegal cash handoffs? Yeah, but it also makes it easier for illegitimate needs for people to be able to have large amounts of cash. There are all kinds of reasons why an individual would want to have $10,000 in cash. And imagine doing that in 20s and lugging that around. And it's much easier if it was just 10 bills of $1,000 each, which we don't have in the United States. I think there was a time when there was. So large denominations make it easier for people to move around large quantities of money. Now, the state doesn't want you to be able to move around large quantities of cash because they can't monitor cash. Cash is much more anonymous than Bitcoin. Cash is the ultimate anonymous means of transacting. So it's great to be able to use cash. And it's sad that America does not have a $1,000 bill. It should, to allow me to be able to go into a car dealership and pay for the car in cash, which is very difficult today because there's just so many pieces of paper. You'd have to bring suitcase upon suitcase in order to do it. All right, Andrew asks, a scary rationalization for Trump from an evangelist preacher. God chooses imperfect people to carry out his message. How do these people now realize Trump is like a golden calf the Bible warns against worshiping? I mean, Andrew, you're way too overthinking it, right? Realize, I mean, you'd have to then assume that they're thinking. But they're not thinking. They're evangelical preachers. It's completely emotional. It's a completely emotional affiliation. You know, Trump is there to smash, to destroy, to stand up against, to slap in the face. He's there to bring chaos and mayhem. That's his job, to the left, of course. But that's his purpose. That's why he's flawed. It's because a good man wouldn't do these things. He wouldn't say these kind of things. And of course they have a golden calf kind of attitude towards him. That's the attitude they have towards any leader. Have you ever seen these big congregations, evangelical congregations, where basically the guy up front, the priest, the preacher, or whatever, can ask them for money because he needs a second jet. The first jet is not good enough. He needs a second private jet. And they send him money for the second jet, right? Or he can sleep with every woman. He can molest anybody. He can violate every commandment. But he is their evangelical preacher, and they will bow before him and do whatever he wants them to do. That is the whole mentality of religion. Particularly the evangelical type, which is totally focused on emotion. That's the essence of evangelism. God, speak, you're on. The essence of evangelism is emotion and a rejection of reason. Paul Cohen says, why can't Gazas cross into Israeli territory today? Because Israel has troops there that won't let them do it. Now, Israel could, theoretically, carve out a piece of desert not far from Gaza, set up a massive tent city for 1.5 million people, and tell them all to move there, surround it with military force, not allow them out, provide them with aid, screen everybody that comes in, so that get away from the tunnel, screen everybody who comes in, and thus to prevent any Hamas fighters from moving. And I think that would actually be a good solution, because it would allow Israel to screen the people. It would present Israel as humanitarian, although it would be very selfish reasons for them to be doing this. And it would empty out Rafah to allow, Israel to enter Rafah and clean it out of whatever elements of Hamas are still there. So At the beginning of the war, Israel could have done that, and maybe should have done it. It would have cost a lot of money. Maybe the Egyptians would have, and the Saudis would have pitched in, create a massive tent city for all these residents and invite them to come over. That would be a not bad solution. Other than that, if they try to cross over to Israel, they get shot. Clark Young, what is the point of going through life not being a truth seeker? Well, I don't know, comfort, ease of the moment, emotional satisfaction, there is no point. The point is escaping the consequences of reality, which is horrific. All of those things, horrific. Liam, why did Putin even do that interview with Tucker? What did he get from it? Maybe he thought the world, including Americans, are far more intellectual than they are and would be willing to sit through a 30-minute lecture on history and be convinced by it. Look, Putin is delusional, right? He's not a healthy human being psychologically, intellectually. He's a sick, delusional human being. And maybe he thought what he just did would convince somebody of something and show his superior intellect or whatever. But trying to understand, people like Putin is impossible. He is delusional, but what he is smarter and knows much more what he wants than somebody like Trump or Biden. Michael says, the crazy thing about people who don't like you is they watch everything you do. Well, very few of them, just a few. Like there's a handful of them who watch everything that I do. I don't understand it. It's bizarre to me. But there's like at least a billion people, no, I'm exaggerating. There are thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people who dislike me who are not watching the show. I wish they would increase my influence. Shahzad, why aren't any angels visited the earth in modern times? In ancient times, they seem to be visiting every week. I think because they're just so disappointed in humanity. We're just so pathetic. In ancient times, we were so much nicer. They could also impress us, right? Today, we'd film them on video. We'd challenge their tech. Our tech might be better than their tech. I don't know. So I think it was easier to impress people back then, so today people are just too hard to impress, right? What are they going to do? Fly in there? We can fly in there. We got planes and stuff. Communicate without we have wireless communication. It's harder to impress us today. I think that's why. But you should ask people who actually know. Thank you, Shazbot, for injecting a little bit of humor into the show. Christian, what's your opinion on the geoliberal idea of a land value tax fee? George and Fred Foldvary claimed it alone would be sufficient to finance government only tax driving prices down, not up. My question is, it doesn't really make any sense, and the question is why. I'm fine with any tax where you say that's the only tax we're going to have. It's going to concentrate ownership in land in fewer hands, not more hands. A lot of people will give up ownership because of the tax. So certain wealthy individuals who can use the land more productively in order to generate enough revenue to pay the tax will own it. It creates all kinds of distortions in terms of ownership, home ownership, land ownership and stuff. I don't think it would be healthy in particular. I keep thinking about it, but I don't think it would be healthy. Why? I think the obvious tax, if you only wanted to have one tax, is a consumption tax. Is just to tax consumption and nothing else. Not tax land and let people use land based on their own personal values, not based on what the government thinks. So no, I don't get it. I think I haven't dug into it, but there seem to be some really significant flawed arguments in it. Every productive activity has to happen. On land, you tax land differently if it's being used for productive activity or used as a home, as a consumption good or a productive good? And if you don't, does that create any distortions? Yeah, I mean, it just seems like a silly idea. Neil Kahn, why is it that Americans are picking two senile old men? Of them has terrible memory and the other faces 91 felony charges. What is wrong with Americans? That is the key question. I think what's wrong with Americans is that they are mindless cowards. They become mindless cowards. They become mindless cowards. They're too cowardly to go with anybody else, and particularly with regard to Trump, they're definitely mindless, right? And with regard to Biden, they're cowards. But there's a mindlessness to the Republican Party. And you know, again, I think both parties, in much of American culture, sadly, is driven by anger and fear. And look, the reality is that a majority of Americans are not angry and fearful, can think decently, and really good human beings, right? That's a majority. And the majority is not MAGA, and the majority is not, you know, crazy Democrats who support Biden. I mean, something like, I don't know, 70% of Democrats don't want Biden. It's the honchos, it's the people in charge. Same thing with the Republican. In the Republican Party is sicker, because the Republican Party wants Trump. But a significant percentage of the Republican Party doesn't. But it's not enough. It's not enough to overturn them. But if you take the people who don't want Biden in the center of the Democratic Party, and you take the people who don't want Trump, that is a majority. And that majority could have a third candidate who could beat both Trump and Biden if you could pick the right person. And I think any Republican could beat Biden right now. Trump is the only one who has the potential to lose to him. So Republicans are just mindless. It's the stupid party. They have elevated the idea that it's the stupid party to new levels of stupidity. Tom, financial clusters, including offshore ones, add value because of their linkages of expertise. This is a point that attackers of offshore centers fail to grasp. Yes, absolutely, but that's true of clusters of anything. There's a reason why there's a Silicon Valley or a Silicon Alley in New York. Clusters are massive benefits. It's why PR and advertising was all on Madison Avenue. It all clustered there. You know, it's a similar reason why, a little different, but similar reason to why gas stations all cluster around the same corner. Often you get two gas stations across the street from one another. There's a reason for that. People then remember, oh, that's the corner with the gas stations. They go fill up there. There are huge benefits of what's called networking. And technology has massive networking benefits, i.e. Silicon Valley. And finance have massive networking benefits, i.e. Hong Kong, Wall Street, offshore, whatever. So yes, financial clusters, like all clusters, industry clusters. I mean, textile was all in the Carolinas, right? All the textile in the U.S. was in the Carolinas. Furniture was all in certain states in the South. Right now, auto manufacturing used to be all in Michigan. Now it's in Michigan, and then it's clustered in certain states in the South. It's a clustering effect. You don't get auto manufacturing, with the exception of Tesla, in Texas. But you get it in South Carolina and Georgia, in that area. It's a clustering effect. Talent comes together, both engineering talent, worker talent. It's a known phenomenon, the networking effect in economics. Pickaxing on Europe. It's interesting in Superabundance that no party is called the Capitalist Party, and also that we don't call capitalism innovism, as Mcloskey coined it. Maybe conservatives could rename. Well, they'd have to, more than rename, they'd have to completely rethink their whole ideology, because it's not the name, it's the whole ideology, which is anti-progress, anti-innovation, anti-moving forward, as is leftism in its various varieties. Roland, unfortunately, I can't super chat in cash, so here's the next best thing. Thank you, Roland. I appreciate it. That Doodle Bunny, reports are coming in now that Joe Biden has gone number 2 in his pants during a press conference. I don't know what to do with that. Roland, there may be a shortage of angels these days, but we have all the more messiahs. Sadly, very, very true. We have lots of messiahs. All right, we've gone a long time. I didn't plan on this. I've got to be teaching at ARU in 40 minutes. So I need to prepare for that. I need to prepare talking points for Fox, just in case they want me on. Busy day. I will talk to you all tomorrow for a news roundup, probably the same time. I think it's earlier tomorrow. But anyway, somewhere around this time, we'll talk. See you then. Oh, no, Tuesdays, it's late. Tuesdays, like 2:30. So I'll see you all tomorrow late for the news roundup. Bye, everybody.